Greetings. Back at you with some more information on the Iranian Israel conflict. Of those of you who haven't been paying attention, which is probably nobody, but I was going to have a little discussion on it. It's going to be an open mic, so people can come on and have a chat, see what people think about it. I'll do that in a little bit. I'll send a link, but I'm not going to bring people up right away. I want to talk about some things. I'll just leave the link out of it until I'll be ready to talk about it with other people. Um, so yeah, I mean, about 4 a.m. my time, Alaska time, Friday, June 13th, Friday the 13th. And I think actually it was about 4 a.m. local time in Iran. That's about when it was struck in Iran, Iranian time. Israel launched an attack, or Iran, sorry. Well, let me take this back. Let's take a step back here. Let's not get into the Iranian attack yet. So on Friday, around 12 o'clock a.m., my time, which is 4 o'clock a.m. In Iran, Israel launched an attack called Operation Rising Lion. And that was an airstrike that had about 200 jets. About 100 sites in Iran were targeted. The Natanz nuclear facility, they had military bases, there were some missile factories, and even residential areas that housed commanders. These were all targeted. And the attack killed, 80 people, 78, I think, officially, and included top military leaders and IRGC commander Hossein Salamani. Plus, there was some nuclear scientists, about 6 of them, that were killed. So Iran, reported about 320 injuries, and most of them were civilians. Um, and so on Friday, about 11 p.m. local time in Israel, Iran responded with about 100 ballistic missiles. They responded earlier, right after Israel attacked Iran, with about 100 drones. But these drones were ineffective, is what I was told. They were pretty much remediated by Israel. Israel took them out. So Iran fired about 100 ballistic missiles and drones to Israel and Tel Aviv. And Tel Aviv was the primary target, and there was explosions and thick smoke all over the city. And missiles struck probably 9 or 10 sites, and that included a military base and civilian buildings. Now, if we go to some of the news now, we can see that it's kind of significant. Like the damage that Iran inflicted is pretty significant on Israel. I mean, this is a pretty big deal. Let's pull that up. Let's pull that up. So it says Iranian missile strike. It's Israel and the military headquarters, an unprecedented attack, and there's significant damage. So let's take a look at that. And is this biblical? Well, we'll find out here in a second. So Iran's missile strike hits the Israeli army, the military headquarters, in unprecedented attack. That's a pretty big deal to hit Israel's military headquarters. That's pretty substantial. That's not like they fired a bunch of rockets and they didn't go anywhere like most of the time. This is a big deal when you hit Israel's military headquarters. I mean, I'm sure they're going to have maybe some casualties or some damage to the infrastructure. So that's a pretty big deal. Hit the military bases and some of the civilian buildings. And so you have the Israeli police, they're reporting property damage, and some buildings are partially destroyed. We don't have the cost estimates yet, but damage is moderate. It goes from moderate to significant. And so I think the Iron Dome probably intercepted quite a few missiles, but we don't know. We don't have the totality of it yet. This is just in the beginning stages here, and they're saying like 41 people were injured, with 2 critical, 8 moderately, 34 with minor injuries from shrapnel, right? And then they had 7 others that were reported in central Israel, which were injured, but no fatalities. I don't know if that's been updated yet. I don't know. I'd have to watch a little bit more to see if there is an update to see if there's fatalities. I wouldn't see why there wouldn't be. And so the missiles hit around 11 p.m. like I said, Israel time, and they continued throughout Saturday, which is today. And so, Iran justified its retaliation, the strike, as a response to Israel's act of war. They believed it was an act of war. Well, the United States gave Iran plenty of time, like 60 days. They went over to 61 days. And so Israel got tired of waiting. They felt justified in attacking Iran. And so Iran struck back, right? Israel killed their key military and scientific figures. They targeted their nuclear facilities, and they feel Israel violated Iran's sovereignty. And Ayatollah, the supreme leader of Iran, called Israel's attack a crime and vowed severe punishment. They're going to be severely punished. So Iran's UN ambassador claimed the strike was carried out with U.S. complicity, like we're complicit in this. We were part of it, which is not good. Because if we're complicit in this, then Iran's going to feel like they have to take out their vengeance against us. And that's all the more reason not to allow Iran to have a nuke. Okay? Because these guys are very backwoods, and they're pushing Sharia law, and they're looking for any excuse to get their 72 virgins or whatever and go up to paradise. So they don't care. Like I said, mutually assured destruction. Well, we've got nukes, they've got nukes. They're not afraid to use them because they believe that it's going to be the end of the world, and they get to be martyrs, and they get to go to paradise and have their virgins and little boys with pearls. We don't think like that, right? We're trying to stay not dead, and they're trying to rush into paradise and get those boys and get the virgins and die as martyrs, basically. And so Iran framed its missile attack as a decisive and precise response to, I guess, deter further Israeli aggression, which I don't think that's going to happen, because Israel already said their attack was one of many. So when Israel launched its preemptive strike to cripple Iran's nuclear program, it was because they claimed it was at a point of no return. Because, like I was saying in my other videos, they were enriching uranium far past the 3 to 5% threshold that would be necessary to run a civilian reactor for, let's say, electricity. Okay. So they were probably at about 60% enriched uranium. And I explained the process earlier about yellow cake, breaking it down. You start off with ore. You start off with the uranium ore. You have to mine it. That takes a long time. And then there's different ways to mine it. You can push chemicals into the ground and leach it and then pull it back up. You can take it as the ore, you break it down, and then you turn it into like a liquid, and then you make it into like a yellow cake. It's called yellow cake. And then you take that yellow cake and you turn that into gas, right? And then that gas is turned into more of a liquid, and it's turned to a solid state. And then you can take that solid state uranium and put it into a warhead. But this takes a long time. It's a very complicated process. It takes years, especially with the centrifuges they have. Iran's centrifuges are very outdated, and you have to have thousands of these. These are thousands of centrifuges that turn, and they spin. And then with that gas you inject in the middle of it, you pull out the uranium. That's the whole point of enriching uranium. It's really a complicated process, and takes a lot of time. And with the sanctions that we've had on Iran, they're not able to have the money, which was a big problem when Obama gave Iran the billions of dollars on the pallet. Remember that? And so Iran was able to continue their, not only give money to their proxies, Hezbollah and Hamas and the Houthis, but then restart their program and then also have more technology. These centrifuges are not cheap, especially when you're running thousands of them. They're spinning, right? So, yeah, I mean, Israel believed that they had to strike. They had to strike because you don't need 60% enriched uranium to run a nuclear facility for electricity. Okay, so, and all these sanctions put a hamper on this, and they had to go underground kind of because Iran doesn't want to get found out. And when you do a testing, we can see you from satellite. We can see when we're monitoring Iran, which we do constantly. You can see commotion. You can see Iran starting to pick up, activity at these sites or activity at certain sites and locations. And so we're monitoring Iran, and they're not supposed to be developing nukes. They're not supposed to be doing any of this, but they don't even allow the atomic energy consultants anymore into Iran to look to whether or not they're enriching uranium. And they developed 2 external labs, which they've kind of had underground. That's why the missile strikes, I'd be kind of curious to see, because I think a lot of these are underground, which a nuke is not really going to take care of. I mean, it would really hamper the geography there, but you're going to have bunker busters to hit those underground facilities. So I'm kind of curious on whether or not Israel hit these nuclear facilities and whether or not they did any damage. Now, they're not weaponized yet, so we can hit this uranium, and it's going to make them maybe glow in the dark a little bit, but it's not going to be like a nuclear war or nuclear explosion or something like that. A nuclear explosion is a chain reaction, and that's the whole part of this process. Is they're trying to create a nuclear reaction through enriched uranium, which they haven't got to a point yet. You have to get to 90%. 90% enriched uranium. Now you can turn it into a bomb or a nuclear weapon. They're not at that point yet. They're at 60%, probably. That's what Israel's claiming. Iran, of course, claims they're not. And so it's kind of like he said, she said kind of thing. And so, yeah, I mean, Iran's denying everything, of course. But do you really want to trust Iran? We've given them lots of leeway. We've given them 60 days to come to a peace agreement, and Trump's even said, "Hey, we'll help you guys out." Nuke, though. See, this is not rocket science here. We can have nukes, and Russia can have nukes, and other places can have nukes. Because why? Because we're not hell bent on destroying Russia or hell bent on destroying places. We don't chant death to Russia or death to whoever. Iran does. Death to Iran, death to Israel, death to the United States, right? Israel is the little Satan, and we're the great Satan. So when you have a country that's got proxies, that Hamas and Hezbollah, that are terrorist organizations that Iran is backing, and then Iran itself says that they're going to nuke us and Israel, then you can't allow them to have a nuke, okay? Because once they do and have a nuke, then you're really up the creek, okay? So you just can't allow them to do this. And I think it's okay that Israel win, and this should not be our fight, okay? This should not be our fight. Israel and the Middle East, they're a disaster. Okay, we should never have stepped foot over there, really, at all. We shouldn't have gotten involved in Afghanistan. We shouldn't have gotten involved in Iraq. These have cost us trillions of dollars. And do they love us over there? No, they hate us because we got involved. We helped fund the regime over in Afghanistan against the Soviets, and we had all that money pushed over there and all the weaponry, and they kept it and they used it against us in guerrilla tactics. So why on earth are we getting our nose into the Middle East business? They don't like us. They don't want us over there. And it's just turned them aggressive towards us. And now we got Iran pissed off at us. Okay, Iran's mad. And Iran can leverage their sleeper cells within the United States, and they've got them, to detonate something or do a chemical attack, maybe at one of our concerts or something, or the Super Bowl or whatever. The possibilities are endless because right now we've got these riots going on. And I'm sure Iran's really happy with the riots going on in California. I liked how the governor of DeSantis said in Florida, hey, you guys try to surround a car in Florida, we're going to drag you and you're going to die probably. So they have orders like if you start getting surrounded by people in Florida, drive. And anybody that gets in your way, hey, tough tough luck, because you're going to get splattered along the highway. And the sheriff said, hey, you spit on us, we're gonna put you into the hospital and then we'll put you in the prison. You do anything against us, you try to come against us physically, throw concrete, then your parents will come and get your remains of you and then take you away because you're going to be dead, basically. So they're not going to play that over in Texas or Florida, but they do that in California because it's a liberal state. Okay, so I don't doubt that Iran is going to leverage the calamity that we're having, these little protests, which ironically are very pro-Iran. Ironically, that's kind of a good one. Are pro-Iran and anti-Israel. Okay, I don't take a side. Like I really don't care. Iran, Palestine, Israel. To me, I don't like Israel either. Okay, I think Israel is kind of snake-like, and Israel's looking out for Israel, which you can't really blame them, to be honest with you. They're surrounded by Muslims. Okay, they're surrounded by Arab nations that want to destroy them. So Israel is going to be very, very cunning and very me, because they're going to protect themselves come hell or they're going to protect themselves no matter what. Would they throw us under the bus to protect themselves? Absolutely, they would. They would throw us under the bus in a second. So we don't have any loyalty to them. We, for some reason, bend over backwards because biblically, I guess we're supposed to support Israel because they're God's chosen ones, right? That's what we believe in Christianity, at least. But do you think Israel likes the United States and Christianity? No, they don't. They hate us. Do you think they like Jesus? No. Okay, so it's kind of like a one-sided relationship, an abusive one, because we give them all the money. Sometimes they give us intel, but they spy on us plenty. Okay, we give them lots of leeway, but half of the time the Mossad agents are over here gathering intelligence on us to use it against us for blackmail. So it's kind of a like a love-hate relationship in a way. And so, we need them in a way because we gather intelligence. They're kind of our barometer over in the Middle East, and they do give us information, and they're kind of the only democracy, I guess, kind of, but they host these gay parades, which is really weird. Tel Aviv's got probably one of the largest gay parades every year. I mean, hundreds of thousands of gays over in Israel. So, to think that Israel is biblical and Israel is, God's chosen people is laughable. They're so perverted over there, it's not even funny. But like I said, I don't really buy into the Bible. I think everybody that wants to tie in the Bible to all this stuff, I think it's a little kooky. But that's their belief, and that's cool. But I think the Bible has created a lot of this stuff. Okay, you got the Isaac and Isaac and Ishmael thing going on between Sarah and Hagar. It's just a disaster biblically. To me, to be honest with you, I think the Bible creates a lot of these problems because you're never going to have peace over there because they have a generational hatred towards each other. Okay, especially with Iran. Like I said, pre-1979, Iran was like the United States in many ways. Look at the photos. They look normal. Women could wear whatever they wanted. They could wear bikinis. And they could go to the beach and they could drive motorcycles and they could do all kinds of stuff. Universities, just Google pre-1979 Iranian women or men. And they literally look like the United States citizens. They're probably more relaxed than us. And they all look happy. They're smiling. And now you look at them, they're wearing burqas and they're really uptight because of the regime. Which, again, Ayatollah was a cleric. He was a cleric, an outsider, basically. And he was pushing, hey, I'll help you guys because the situation over there, even though they were pretty lax and they were westernized, they did have some corruption a little bit, like a lot of places do. And they did have a little bit of oppression, but it wasn't anything close to what they have today. They would change everything in a New York minute if they could go back to how it was before. 46 years they've been under this oppression, okay? Because they made a major boo-boo. Once Ayatollah got into power, his stormtroopers and his stooges took over everything, man, and they oppressed everybody. You couldn't say anything or they would kill you. So, you got to be careful what you wish for. They had a little bit of oppression and a little bit of embezzlement and fraud. And now they got the big one. Okay, they're totally oppressed, so they got really sold down the river to this new regime. And a lot of Iranians want Israel to win. They're chanting "Death to Iran" and "Long live Israel." Iranian citizens are saying this, and a lot of places within Israel, Muslim nations, support Israel, like Saudi Arabia. They don't like Iran. A lot of these places don't like Iran because Iran has attacked them, right? So it's not like Israel is alone on this. A lot of people, I would say a lot of those in the Middle East look at Iran as a rogue terrorist state that wants, they want to have them dismantled. So they're secretly cheering them on. It's not like it's just all, Israel is going in there by themselves and they have us and the UK and other people on their side. No, they've got their own citizens. I would say a large percentage of the Iranian citizens want the regime to fall because they want freedom. They want freedom. They don't want to be oppressed. They've been oppressed for 46 years, but it's pretty hard to topple a regime which says that, hey, if you disagree with us, we're going to kill you and we're going to kill your family. Right, you're gonna shut up, and they monitor the airwaves. You can't really say anything. Women were just allowed to drive cars like a couple of years ago, right? They were forbidden before, and I think they can't even have friends that are male. They can't even go outside by themselves. I think they have to have a guardian or something. So it's heavily oppressed. Where's that? Is that Saudi Arabia? I'm pretty sure I think that's actually Saudi Arabia, now that I think about it. Could be. I'm trying to think. Yeah, I think it's Saudi Arabia. I think I'm mistaken on that. Yeah, Iran, I think, they're the ones with the heavy-duty burqas, and they have all this oppression. Yeah, I mean, it's just, like I said, it's going to be a real cliffhanger here because Israel and Iran, they don't play around. Israel does not play around. They don't really care about the United States and what we have to think. I mean, they do out of, I guess, a little bit of consideration for us. They'll let us know maybe ahead of time, but they didn't even alert the air traffic controllers when they took off. They didn't say, hey, we're going to have 200 jets flying through. They didn't change anything. So you got to imagine air traffic controllers when they're trying to to coordinate flight schedules, and you got 200 military jets heading towards Iran. Okay, imagine that. What are these planes? Because they wanted to take them by surprise. They didn't want to take a chance of having somebody leak that information over to Iran and have it foiled, because this was years in the making, right? Years in the making. When Israel does things like this, they don't tell anybody. They just hit, and that's one of their, and a lot of this was inside. They were actually inside Iran's space. They were in Iran with a secret facility, well, really close to them, and they basically were like a Trojan horse. They had all of their drones being set up in very close proximity. So it's not like they had to fly over from Tel Aviv over to Iran. They were within Iranians' borders. The military intelligence. So it was a very coordinated strike against Iran, and I think they really took Iran by surprise. Um, you know, I think no Islamic country fully supports Israel. Okay, there's not like they declare full support for Israel, but they have Muslim majority countries. They do have varying degrees of alignment with Israel because they have shared concerns about Iran's influence over the regions. So, that's the thing. Like Saudi Arabia and the United States are allies. We've been allies for a long time. The United Arab Emirates they have, I guess, normal relationships with Israel because we have the Abraham Accords that were set up in 2020. And that's got economic and diplomatic and security cooperations. We have trade agreements set up. So there's intelligence sharing and even joint defenses against Iranian drones and missiles. And the United Arab Emirates even hosted the Israeli officials, and the Prime Minister Netanyahu met with the Arab Emirates leaders. And they don't like Iran. They don't trust Iran. They consider them a threat because they have proxies. Iran has proxies in Yemen, and they influence Iraq and Syria. And they have different, there's other Muslim nations or Muslim, like Saudi Arabia. You have Bahrain's another one. You have Morocco, right? Morocco kind of normalized relations with Israel around the same time in 2020 with the Abraham Accords. That was something that hadn't been done in like 20 years. So they have military cooperation. You got arms deals going on now and economic partnerships. And that was because of the United States. Morocco recognized Israel because of the United States support for its claim over the western parts of it. So, and then you got the Sudan, right? They also joined the Abraham Accords. This is why the Abraham Accords was a monumental thing that Trump set up, because you got all of these other Muslim nations that are acknowledging Israel's right to be there, but also recognizing that Iran is a bad place, right? Iran's coming from a very bad place. And so they're recognizing that if Iran gets a nuke, these countries, nations, and states are going to be in severe trouble. They're going to be in a lot of turmoil. And so they're worried about it because Sudan used to be on the U.S. list of the state sponsors of terrorism. And so they wanted to be moved off of it to get rid of the sanctions. So they joined the Abraham Accords in 2020. And so it's going along slow, but Sudan has engaged in diplomatic exchanges with Israel. Sudan, however you want to call it. And so, their deal with Iran kind of deteriorated in 2014 after that, when they expelled the Iranian diplomats and they aligned more with Saudi Arabia. and that was against Iran's influence in the region. They kind of shifted towards Israel, and they had an anti-Iran uh, stance. And then you got Jordan. Again, Jordan has had a peace treaty with Israel since 1994, or about there. And they have cooperation, security, they have sharing, they share water, they have trade going on. And so they played a key role in intercepting the Iranian drones and the missiles during the April 2024 attack on Israel. So Jordan helps them out. And again, Jordan views Hezbollah and Iran's support for Hezbollah and other proxies as a threat to regional stability. All of them want, believe it or not, they want peace. Even though they're Muslim countries, they still want peace. And so they align with Israel in many ways. They trade, they have security agreements. And Iran doesn't like this. Iran kind of wants to be the leader, and they want to spread their Sharia law throughout the entire region, and other places don't want that. And Jordan has a large Palestine population, and they do favor the Palestinians, and they do have criticism of Israel's actions in Gaza, but they still have security cooperation with Israel because Iran is more worrisome than the quarrels that they have with Israel, right? So the primary driver is that they see Iran as a regional threat. And because Iran supports proxies like Hezbollah and the Houthis, and they have the Shia militias in Iraq, right? And so they don't state so publicly that they support Israel, but they do. It's just not publicly acknowledged. And so Gaza is a completely different thing. They'll criticize Israel's actions in Gaza and the West Bank because they have Palestinians to support. But when it comes to intelligence sharing and defense, defense and just the normalization in the region, they do align with Israel against Iran. So that's the thing. Is the point that I'm trying to make is Israel has a lot more support than people know. So when people are shouting that they want Iran to be thrown, a lot of these people are Iranians' own citizens. So the Abraham Accord was something that really normalized things, right? It was totally different, a big shift, and that was driven by the United States about the shared concerns over Iran. And that opened up ties with Israel, right? Even though it's pretty critical, the talkings, and they don't have any love necessarily for Israel, but they know that, hey, if we don't get along, then we're really going to be all up the creek, because Iran's going to take over and spread their terror throughout our countries also. So that's why they're siding kind of with Israel. It's kind of a necessary evil, I guess. But anyway, I kind of wandered off on that. Yeah, I mean, Israel launched this preemptive strike to cripple the program, the nuclear program. That's why they started it. They went off and they had a preemptive strike against Iran, and that they got to a point where they felt that their enrichment was far beyond what should have been allowed. And so it was either then or now, either then or maybe never. There were weeks. That's what Israel says. There were weeks or whatever from developing a weapon. And in fact, if you actually look at some of the research I was doing, they actually were meeting. So Israel kind of tricked Iran into meeting, but they were going to meet and develop kind of a bomb that was kind of a dirty bomb that was not really up to speed as far as nuclear, but it was kind of like that. And it was going to be pretty catastrophic. But that's what Israel was, led to believe. And that's why they kind of acted when they did. And so, Israel also wanted to weaken Iran's military leadership and air defenses because, hey, if you attack Iran and you attack their nuclear facilities, guess what? Their scientists and their leaders are going to go underground, and you might not ever get them again. Okay, so you wanted to kind of create this bad cop versus good cop thing with Trump and Netanyahu to kind of have them, Trump's playing the field, oh, I'll try to work with you. And then Israel's like, we got to strike, and they're kind of playing back and forth. It kind of gives them an element of surprise. You don't want to say that we're just going to go in and attack, but you need to make sure that when you do attack, that you do so with precision, because if you don't, it's pretty much over, because the scientists are going to go underground and they're going to be heavily guarded and you'll never find them. We were able to Israel was able to strike these scientists at home, and they all met together. I guess Israel tricked them into meeting, and they all met, and then they had a precision strike and killed most of them. So what kind of military leaders meet in person anyway? That's kind of stupid. But anyway, that's something that probably won't ever do again. So yeah, Netanyahu warned that more is on the way. There's future plans of attacks. Israel pretty much controls Iran's airspace right now because they took out all of their missile defense systems. Basically, they targeted their airways or airports. They're kind of immobilized. They're kind of like sitting ducks right now. So Israel can take over Iran's airspace at will. And so they're going to strike until their nuclear ability is neutralized totally. Iran is just completely neutralized. And I'm sure they're going to be on the ground. Mossad's going to be on the ground to verify whether or not they have the ability to create a nuke. And so it's going to be multi-day. There's going to be future attacks, probably. I don't know about what's going to happen now. I mean, now that Iran struck back, I think Israel's going to hit them with impunity. I think Israel's going to hit them hard. But they called it a decisive response. That's what Iran's Revolutionary Guard called it, a decisive response. But they didn't state whether or not it was sufficient. I mean, it's a response, but whether or not it's sufficient to relax under what happened to Israel. I don't think so, because it's still ongoing. Israel's going to attack. They're not going to relax at all. So I think, some people think that Iran's going to limit further escalation to avoid a full-scale war. Well, we don't know. Iran hit Israel back. They hit their regional military headquarters or whatever. I don't think Israel's going to let that go. I just don't. And if they get into a full-scale war, I really hope we stay out of it. I mean, by staying out of it, I mean not like sending fighters over or F-22s and F-16s. We need to stay off of this. We need to stay out of it. Iran's already made us complicit in it anyway, so they're going to try to get us somehow. But we don't want to stroke tensions, because if we start getting involved in it, our own country is divided so much that our own country is going to protest it. For a fact the liberals are going to protest it. They're going to push for, how much of a, Trump said he wasn't going to be any wars. Now we're in wars, and they're going to, whose side are they going to take? Israel? No, they're not going to take Israel's side, because they pretty much hate the United States anyway. So they're looking for anything to criticize the United States for, and they're going to start. Iran will leverage this hatred that the liberals have for the United States and leverage it against us. So it's not going to be pretty. But Hezbollah and Hamas is pretty much neutered. In a lot of ways, we kind of spanked them pretty good. So those proxies are pretty much neutered. They're not going to rise up and take over now. They're kind of like running for their lives. And so they're trying to rebuild slowly, but we've been keeping an eye on them. So I think the risk of a broader Middle East conflict is pretty high. I would say probably 70 to 80%. That's going to be likely in the near future here, which is, it's kind of unheard of, really, when you get to it, because Iran's been planning on developing a nuke for a long time, like 30 years or more. But now they've gotten hit by Israel. That's something that's never happened before. So, you got to be careful, because Israel's ongoing strikes against Iran's military facilities or just its civilian population or whoever, it could spiral out of control, especially if Iran targets U.S. assets or Israel escalates this even further. We're really going to be pulled into it. The proxies like the Iraqi militias and the Houthis, or Israel's actions in Gaza, Lebanon, could make this even worse. It's a soup sandwich over there. Okay. We've been giving them logistical support, like intelligence. We helped build the Iron Dome, which is like $200 million to build. We helped build that. We provided the intelligence. We provided the missile defense systems, the technology to help build that. It wasn't like Israel developed it by themselves. And we're going to take that same technology and build the Golden Dome or whatever they want to build for the United States, which is going to cost $200 billion. Not 200 million, 200 billion. That's a lot of money to build this defense system. Imagine if we just had peace in the world. Imagine how much money we could put towards feeding the homeless and taking care of people that need to be taken care of, instead of spending all this money on war. And because it's biblical, okay? If the Bible, let's just face it, if the Bible was not there, we wouldn't have any of this stuff. It just wouldn't occur, because people take what the Bible says and they have it all back to biblical times, and this is all biblical, and it's all a result of that. Okay, whether or not it's true or not, it's all a result of this. Okay, is it beneficial to society or to us as human beings? No. Religion causes so much of this evil that we see today. And it's all religion. It's all religion. Okay. Atheism is just as bad, but this reform religion that we have within Christianity is just as bad. Israel's always been at war pretty much. I mean, they always believed that God had their back because it's a fantasy. Back in then, you always wanted God to have your back. Well, don't touch us, otherwise God will wipe you out. Right? And that's the same thing in Christianity today. Well, we have the truth, and if you don't believe us, you're going to hell. Everybody's going to hell but Christians. Well, yeah, that's kind of like the mentality of an ancient Israelite. Well, if you disagree with us or you go against Israel, God will smite you dead. He will kill everybody, even the firstborn kids. Right? This is just basically a war mentality during those days. And then you come along Jesus, which is more peaceful at occupation times, and he's teaching love. Okay, so what happened? Jesus is making the Father known, and the Father is all love and warm and fuzzies. But back in the Old Testament, he was tearing apart little kids because they made fun of somebody's bald head. So you have some major conflicts of interest going on between the Old Testament and New Testament. It's kind of like God had a little bit of a laxative or something, and he got a little bit more normal. But before that, he was maybe in his terrible twos or something, and he was just angry at everybody, right? And that's just the biblical narrative. I mean, the biblical narrative is war, kill. Sadly, and then Islam is not any better. Okay, they believe they're going to get their 72 raisins or whatever, the virgins, when they die and go to heaven, and they're going to be served by boys as white as pearls, and they're going to be on couches. I mean, it's just, religion is really a disaster, to be honest with you. Can you blame atheists for despising religion, for seeing all of this calamity and seeing all the death and the bloodshed? Religion causes this. Okay, it causes this stuff. There's never going to be peace. So I understand why atheists condemn both of the Abrahamic religions, or all of them, because of stuff like this. So we withdrew diplomats from Iraq and other military departures. We had we signaled this a couple of days ago. Hey, you guys better get out, because if Iran attacks or if Israel attacks, these people could be targeted. If Iran attacks the U.S. bases, or if Israel requests deeper support, like refueling jets, then the U.S. could be drawn in. And that's probably around 50%, I would say, probably 40 to 50% that we are going to be involved if Iran attacks the U.S. bases or if Israel asks us for more support. And that doesn't matter. I mean, Trump's reluctance here. I think there's a lot more people. Trump's probably going to call the he's going to call it, but you gotta know that Trump's going to be supporting Israel too, probably. So Israel's kind of a problem child, and Iran's kind of a problem child, and unfortunately, because of our reliance on the Bible, and we got to support Israel, we're going to get sucked into another war, right? And then we're going to end up paying for it dearly, either financially or just with our lives, our people. Trump wants to avoid war. Okay, he's been trying to avoid war, back during the times of the Iraq War. With Bush, he criticized Bush. He doesn't want war. Cheney was a warmonger. Hillary Clinton's a warmonger. Trump was always critical of war because Trump doesn't like to spend lots of money over stupid stuff. It just does nothing but kill people. So he's a businessman. He wants to invest. And he even said, hey, I'll help Iran become a prosperous place. Just sign the agreement. It's kind of like no nuclear weapons and we'll make you a. But see, they don't care. They don't want to be prosperous like that. The people do. But Ayatollah and the other minions that he has, they don't care about that because they want to develop a nuclear weapon to destroy Israel. That's the thing. They don't want peace. And this time that Trump gave them should be proof of this. They do not want peace over there. So, we withdrew people, and he wants to avoid war. He wants to have diplomacy. But the U.S. commitment to Israel's security and pressure from Republican war hawks like Lindsey Graham and Ted Cruz, I really think it could force involvement if this escalation threatens Israel's existence. Ted Cruz and Lindsey Graham, man, they want this war. And so I think a peace agreement between Israel and Iran is unlikely now. I would say probably 10 to 15%. Given the open conflict we see, the mutual distrust they have, and Israel's goal to dismantle Iran's nuclear program militarily. And you have another problem because you have Iran's refusal to abandon their uranium enrichment, and you have Israel's aggressive posture on this, and that's just really dimming any future prospects we have on trying to have a peace agreement. So, we had a sixth round of talks, the U.S. Iranian talks, that was supposed to be scheduled for Sunday, this coming Sunday, in Oman. But Iran canceled after Israel struck. And then Trump was trying to get Iran to negotiate and said, hey, worse things are going to happen and Israel's going to attack you harder, but Iran has a hardline stance on this. They're making this deal improbable. And I think, again, it's probably about 15%. Now we're going to have a deal, probably 25%. So you look at Netanyahu's actions, I think they're undermining Trump's a little bit. I think Trump upset Netanyahu because Trump wanted a peace deal. And Israel doesn't trust Iran. So Israel's happy probably that Iran didn't make a peace deal because now Israel feels emboldened and they can go attack Iran. I really think that Israel would have attacked Iran even if Trump would have made a peace deal. I really think they would have because, again, Israel's looking out for themselves. They really don't care about what we and Iran have peace on. It's more larger to them than just our peace deal. So I really see this as a problem. So I really think that Iran views the concessions as surrender. And Israel sees them as you have to have complete nuclear dismantlement. The regional proxies and domestic pressures in both countries makes it even worse. Okay. So Israel attacked the military sites on June 13th. Why? Because they wanted to prevent it from becoming a nuclear weaponized country. And they killed people, 78 people or so. And then, of course, Iran's going to launch 100 missiles at Tel Aviv and cause problems, cause damage, moderate damage. So Israel justifies its strike as self-defense against a threat, but Iran sees it as a U.S.-backed act of war. And they're going to retaliate to try to say, well, we're going to deter further attacks. We're going to hit you also. Don't hit us again, otherwise we're going to hit you again. So we did seek a diplomatic nuclear deal with Iran, but it supported Israel's security, which Iran doesn't go for. Okay? Because now we're kind of sucked into it in a way. If Iran targets U.S. assets or Israeli forces at all, I mean, like within the embassies that we have, then we're really going to have to respond, especially when we have so much of a vested interest with Israel, and it's going to open up a wider Middle East war, and I mean, it could get really, really bad. The violence is going to escalate. So we have America first. That's Trump's policy, America first, and he campaigned on it to end foreign wars and make the U.S. military investment just in the United States. But I mean, if American lives or bases are attacked by Iran, this is not going to work, okay? Because we have obligations to Israel and we have pressure from Congress, and that could put the United States into airstrikes. We have Lindsey Graham, Ted Cruz, people in high up places that are going to put pressure on Trump and other leaders to have airstrikes or ramp up their missile defenses, especially if Iran's response overwhelms Israel. Or Israel is getting pounded hard, then we're really going to be in a tight place, because then we're going to have to support Israel. And the United States has already bolstered its presence over in the Middle East. And so that shows that we're prepared, but we're not committed. Like, we haven't put boots on the ground. We haven't sent over fighters, right? And, some Christians will say, oh, this is a biblical prophecy. I always get that. This is biblical prophecy. Well, like the end times, Iran, Israel end times, like in Ezekiel 38 through 39, which talks about a coalition, like often interpreted to include Persia, which is modern Iran, and they're going to attack Israel, which is going to lead to divine intervention. You've got Gog and Magog, but their identities are debated, not even explicitly stated as Iran. There's no biblical verse that names Iran and Israel fighting in 2025 or any mention of modern wars. See, that's the thing with the Bible. It's so vague. I mean, come on. If God wanted us to know, he would give us some very clear, concrete evidence, not this mystery that we have to unpack and look into it. Oh, do you see that? Oh, everybody's got their own interpretation. And it's kind of like a puzzle so God gave us a puzzle book. And then we have to be judged on that puzzle book. Why couldn't God give us clear insight? Right? Oh, well, that would just change the directions, because people would know when come on, man. Like, it's so vague, you could make it say anything you want, really. You can't really prove it wrong, and you can't prove it correct. The Bible can say pretty much anything you want it to say, right? Like kind of like the Quran in Islam. The day wraps the night and the night wraps the day. See? The earth is spherical. The day wraps the night and the night wraps the day. And these are verses that Muslims use to say, see, Allah, the most wise and omniscient, told us that the earth is spherical, wraps. See, wrapping, it wraps. So it's round. I mean, it's like, this is just totally, this is just major brainwashing. And there's nothing with Ezekiel's prophecy which ties it to Iran and Israel. It's symbolic. It's tied to ancient nations, not modern geopolitics or anything like that. And the interpretations, again, they vary widely, and try to apply them to current events is speculation at best, and it lacks concrete evidence. So, yeah, some people will see these biblical parallels as Iran and Israel, but there's no definitive scripture that proves that today's Iran and Israel conflict is in prophecy. You go to Twitter or whatever, you could see all of these Christian nutballs, nutcases. It's the end of the world. It's prophecy. They do this all the time, and nothing happens, and then they go back to their man cave. It's always the same with these Christian nutballs. Okay, it's always the same. So this is a very critical moment. You got people dead in Iran. You got people injured in Israel, and the Middle East is on edge. I wouldn't want to be over there right now, but Israel's push to stop Iran's nuclear program, and you got Iran's retaliation, could ignite a bigger war, and that could pull us in, despite the peace that Trump wants. And so I would say that a diplomatic resolution is very distant at this point. And the biblical prophecies, they're unproven. There's nothing, any evidence of a biblical prophecy. So I don't know. I mean, do we think that peace can prevail, or is escalation inevitable? I don't know. So I'd like to talk to people. Maybe if people want to come up. Otherwise, I'll probably end it. It's been about an hour. I'd like to hear what people have to say, but most people are probably doing their thing. It's Friday, and I got to do my thing also. So I just wanted to fire this off, and people can listen to it later. But it's been an interesting couple of days, and I just don't want us to get involved over in this war, because we got enough problems going on in our country. We have too many problems with our own people, with our own infrastructure, with our own war, especially with Israel and Iran. Come on, give me a break. We do not want to be at war with Iran. I guess if we had to be at war with any Middle East opponent, Iran probably would be the one that we would choose, because a lot of people hate them. Okay, so a lot of people hate Iran. Even the Iranians hate the regime. So we would be seen as kind of like a hero in a way, because a lot of people would be cheering for us to overthrow the regime, and we could liberate them. See, this could be a critical point, because they don't want to lose power. The Iranian regime does not want to lose power. They want to keep the status quo. But if we overturn the regime and get Iran to come to the table and get their blinders off, where they realize that they can't develop a nuclear weapon, then Iran could really change course, and they could start working towards peace. So this could be a good thing. This could be a good thing. Letting Iran sit there and enrich uranium until the point where they get a atomic or a nuclear weapon would be stupid. So I think Israel did the right thing. I don't think there's no way to really get around it. Israel had to hit them. It was just a matter of time. It was just a matter of time, especially when you're working towards enriching uranium and you're at 60%. Okay, 90% is about when you start developing a nuclear weapon. And they probably started having all of the designing to put it into a weapon, a warhead. Now they probably already have that. So they're just waiting. Like, why would you want to develop this, enrich the uranium and then take another 2 years or so to develop a warhead and then some type of package? No, you would probably start doing that now. So you'd have the size and everything that you would need. And again, you have just all kinds of different elements within the infrastructure of the nuclear weapon to keep it from detonating itself. It's such a complex process, like I was saying. It's such a complex process to build a nuclear weapon. And the fact that Iran has had to go underground to basically do that, then it's taken them even longer. Okay, because you can't, us, we could develop it at our leisure. We could develop it at the facilities. We're not under sanctions like they are. We don't have to develop necessarily underground, people monitoring us, right? They do. There's all kinds of sanctions. So that's a problem for them. They have to have, even finding economically viable deposits of uranium takes years to explore. It's not a small deal. It's not a small deal at all. You have to mine it, and then you have, uranium is radioactive. Okay, so you have to have large scale equipment to protect you, and you have domestic uranium in Iran. It's limited, so the reliance on smaller deposits, which slows it down. So again, the uranium has different isotopes. You got two isotopes in there. You got the fissile isotope, which is the U-238, and then you have the non-fissile is the 238, and then you have the fissile, which is the 235, and that's the chain reaction. So it needs a high concentration of U-235, which is fissile, which means it can sustain a chain reaction, and then 99.3% of it is going to be non-fissile, and that's why you have to enrich it. You have to enrich the uranium, because uranium is only it's a rock that's about like 1% uranium by weight. And so you have the ore, you process it to extract the uranium, and you turn it into a concentrated form. Like I was saying, it's called yellow cake, and that's uranium oxide. And you crush it and grind it. You have the ore, the yellow cake, you crush it, and it's a fine powder, and that increases its surface area. Then you mix it with chemicals. Sulfuric acid is a chemical that you would use to dissolve the uranium, and that would be basically leave behind waste rock. You have tailings of it, and then you dry it. You would dry it. The sulfuric acid dissolves it. It leaves behind the tailings of it. Then you dry it, and it's into a powder. And then you take the powder, the yellow cake. Yellow cake's about 70 to 90% uranium oxide, and it's more concentrated than raw ore. You're concentrating it, you're working up a way, and so it just takes a bunch of time to get this. You have to build the facilities to be able to mill it, and then you have to be able to handle it. The tailings, that's complex and it's regulated, and then you have a limited milling, ability in Iran, and you have to import all the technology. They don't really have a way to develop this stuff themselves. So then you convert the yellow cake to uranium hexafluoride, and that's UF6. And so you purify it. Like I said, yellow cake is purified to remove impurities from it. And then the purified uranium is touched on with like hydrofluoric acid, and it turns it to gas. And that gas, that compound turns to gas when you heat it up. And so you would heat it up, and then you would, I don't know exactly how you would grab the gas. Like, I think you would take it and you would, well, first of all, you take it and spin it in a centrifuge. So you have these centrifuges, and those are like a cylinder machine that spin tens of thousands of RPMs. They go around, and there's lots of them. Some of them are thousands, and that separates that heavier U-238 from the lighter 235, because there's a mass difference in there. So it separates them, and then the enriched 235, which is lighter, collects near the center, and you pipe it through the next centrifuge to enrich it even further. So it goes through a process where you spin it. It separates, the 238 separates from the 235, right? And the 235 is lighter. It connects near the center, and that's piped to the next centrifuge, and then you repeat it. So it's like a cascade of thousands and thousands of centrifuges that are trying to get to this high enrichment level. You have to keep enriching it because it starts off at 0.1%, and then you get to 3% or 5%. That's enough for a nuclear reactor for like a electricity, but we're talking 90%. So can you imagine? Can you imagine how long it would take you to spin the 238, the U-238, and the U-235 to get the 235 to the center and then pipe it over to the next centrifuge and repeat that same process over and over again? That takes a long time. And then you have to, there's other ways to do it, right? There's diffusion. You would have a membrane that you would separate those, and then you have lasers that could ionize the 235, but this isn't widely used, and that's experimental. So the main thing is the centrifuges. That's why when you watch some of the videos, they're right? And then you would have this gas, this UF6 gas. It's converted back to a solid form, and that's uranium metal oxide. So they have all of these facilities at Natanz, which is one of their facilities, or I think it's Ferdo is another one. These are kind of like off the grid though. And so it takes a lot of time, and the centrifuges that Iran has are outdated, they're old, they're obsolete. And so it takes them even more time. And we have the restrictions, we have the international restrictions on this. And again, the sanctions have really hampered their development. So just having a reliable high-speed centrifuge is really a difficult thing to have when you're under sanctions and you have no money to buy this technology. They break down. Iran centrifuges break down, and the new ones, the new centrifuges, they take forever to make. They have a lot of research and development, and one weapon takes about, I think the it's about 25 kilograms, which is 90% of U-235, and that requires thousands of centrifuges running for months or years. Okay, again, you separate the 235 from the 238. 235 goes into the middle. It's piped over to another centrifuge, and that runs and runs and runs and runs and runs. Thousands and thousands of them are running for months or years to enrich this uranium. Okay, it's not a small deal. So it's kind of easy to pick up when you have a massive amount of centrifuges running. You can pick this up through frequencies, and it's very energy intensive. I mean, we can monitor the amount of electricity that we have in other countries. And when you have a limited infrastructure and you have sanctions, then this creates a bottleneck, right? And Iran has a bottleneck. So you convert this UF6 gas to a solid form, and then you put it into a weapon, right? And basically, in a nutshell, you reduce the UF6 gas to produce like a metal, uranium metal, and they form it, they cast it like you have a cast, and you put it into a solid shape, which is going to be a sphere or a cylinder for the core of the weapon, right? So it's shaped with extreme precision, just very precise, because it has to fit the weapon's design perfectly. And I mean, it's just like I said, it just all requires extreme precision and time. People that are familiar with metallurgy, if you have any impurities, it can affect the weapon's performance. And the facilities are highly sensitive, and they're very, you go into like one of these clear rooms or clean rooms when they're working on Intel processes or whatever. That's nothing compared to a nuclear facility. Can you imagine the uranium that's been spun into it for a nuclear weapon, how clean you have to be? Okay, and how dangerous you'd have working around this kind of stuff. It requires advanced engineering. We're talking about a chain reaction, a nuclear chain reaction, a fission bomb, basically is what it is. So you have the sphere, the cylinder, which is called the pit. That's the heart of the bomb. And again, you need about 90% of U-235 in that. That's about 15 to 25 kilograms. And then you have the neutron source, which is the polonium that triggers that chain reaction by emitting I think it's the I think it's combined with another chemical. I forgot the name of it, but it's polonium, and that triggers the chain reaction, and it has neutrons that are sent out at the right moment. I don't remember exactly what that other combination is. I'd have to look that up, but that's the source of that's the initiator. It's polonium. I can't remember. The other one I think starts with a B, I think, or something. But then you have basically a reflector that it's heavy material that surrounds the core, and like I said, it reflects the neutrons back to the core, and that enhances the chain reaction. Everything's like kind of like a funnel in a way, I guess. But it's pretty interesting how that works. And so anyway, getting back, I kind of wandered off on that. Sorry. Getting back to the news, what do we have? We have Israel warns of a fourth round of missiles incoming after Iran strikes military headquarters. So Iran retaliates against Israel with military barrage. Iran threatens to hit U.S. bases in the Middle East. Oh, great. Iran threatens to hit military. That is going to draw us into a war. Okay. If Iran hits military bases in the Middle East, then we are going to war, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. That's not going to be and taking it from Iran. That's going to really, and I think Israel, for a fact, Israel wants that to happen. Israel wants us to get hit because then we're going to be forced to be into a war with Israel, which we do not want. And then we're going to.
Chevy trucks have you covered when the road takes you from smooth sailing to Chevy Colorado will eat up.
That's going to be start hitting our, and they're going to. That's what they said. So if they hit our bases, then wow, yeah, that's a threat, but we don't know. So if they hit our bases, then we're really going to be forced into this war, kind of like both World War I and World War II.
Israel destroying missile launchers inside Iran. Take a look at that. Wow, powerful.
Yeah, that's not going to be good. This is the guys. This is not small fry here.
Meeting with the National Security
I would be
Council
very
in this
concerned.
situation. That started at 11 a.m.
I would be very
The U.S. says
concerned
it has played no role in Israel's
about
offensive against
that,
Iran.
because
The US has been emphatic on that. And
Israel
officials
is
claim
one
they're
thing,
still
but drawing us
hoping
into
to
the war is
continue
another
the
thing.
nuclear agreement negotiations
How can I
with the
pause
Iranian
that?
regime. Rich Edson is live at the White House with the latest. Rich.
Well, before that National Security Council meeting this morning, the president has been online. He's been trying to push the Iranians to reach an agreement to dismantle their nuclear program so they can avoid attacks like this. The president posted, quote, 2 months ago, I gave Iran a 60-day ultimatum to make a deal. They should have done it. Today is 61. I told them what to do, but they just couldn't get there. Now they have perhaps a second chance. The president
No, they don't have a second chance. There's no
in
second
situation
chance.
room that started at 11 a.m.
I don't think Israel or Iran wants a second chance. Iran's hell bent on making us pay now. So, I mean, if Iran was going to attack the U.S. bases in the Middle East, I think the consequences would depend on the scale of it and the targets and what the context was. I think that I think it could be bad. It could be minor. It all depends. It all depends on what happens. We have about 40,000 to 50,000 troops over there. There's 20 bases or so that we have. We have bases over in Iraq. We have bases in Jordan. We have bases in Kuwait. We have bases in Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates. And so typically we would counterstrike. That's typically how the United States responds to attacks, right? Back in when the Iranians hit us, our bases, we launched airstrikes on their storage facilities and militia targets in Syria and Iraq. And we killed about, I don't know, 50 or 60 of their militants. And that included a senior commander. So, I mean, if they directly attacked us, if it was a direct attack, that would prompt a stronger response from us. And then we probably would target their military infrastructure, their military sites, missile sites, or their Revolutionary Guard Corps facilities. I know we've deployed B-2 bombers over there before to Diego Garcia and aircraft carriers in the region, and I think in fact I was just reading a little bit ago that we have an aircraft carrier en route right now, so we're showing readiness for retaliation. We've got Patriot missiles, air defense systems, and we've got the THAAD, which is an interception system that can intercept drones and missiles from Iran, which we've used before in just not too long ago. But I think a large scale or precise attack could cause, that's going to be a big problem. We see that where they cause damage to Israel, and there's no fatalities, but they still strike psychological warfare into the area. But I don't know, man. This is really starting to get hairy. The more I look at it, they does too. So that could be a real problem, especially if they target just really densely areas in Qatar. That's going to be a problem. Like I said, we got when we have a couple of soldiers hit there, and we had people injured, and then they have ballistic missiles with a 20,000 kilometer range. They can hit these targets pretty good. When you had the Al-Assad attack. So I don't know. It's going to be very, very interesting the next 2 weeks. Okay. When you have Qatar, you have the United Arab Emirates, they could be drawn into this conflict. So Iran's already warned that it would target nations supporting the United States or Israel operations, and especially their oil facilities. So we have Hezbollah in Lebanon and the Houthis in Yemen, and we have militias in Iraq and Syria that could intensify attacks on us. So I don't know. Yeah, it's just going to be a nail biter. I think they could target our oil infrastructure in the Gulf states like Saudi Arabia. That's going to be not good. Saudi Arabia's got their own military and jets and stuff, but that would spike oil prices. I mean, we're talking about $30 a gallon probably would go up. I would think that's going to be huge. That would disrupt the strait through. You have 20% of the global oil passes through that strait, could cause a global economic crisis with oil. And that could destabilize the financial markets. I mean, oil is going to skyrocket, which would be good for Alaska because we get royalties off of that. we become very, very rich with oil money. So I think Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, they refuse to allow their airspace or bases to be used for U.S. attacks on Iran because they don't want to be retaliated against. Smart. So an Iranian attack on the U.S. bases in these countries would strain this neutrality and force these people to choose between us or them, basically. And Russia and China, which do have ties to Iran, could condemn U.S. or Israel actions which would complicate things. China's already criticized Israel's attack on Iran, okay? And the UN could face pressure to put sanctions back if Iran talks about this. If the nuclear talks collapse, the UN would sanction Iran. I will see that. So yeah, I mean, it could get ugly here. I think that an attack on U.S. bases would accelerate Iran's nuclear ambitions, and that would prompt a preemptive strike by the United States or Israel. I really do. And yeah, man, I don't know. The more I'm reading about stuff, I think that it's going to be a real doozy here the next couple of weeks. Anyway, I got to go. I've done a lot of research on this, and it affects my job, and it affects a lot of other people too. So things might be going dark here a little bit, but yeah, man, I don't know. This whole deal is pretty scary. People that have stock. I got stock, but Alaska's a lot of stock in oil, which is a good thing. But I mean, we're talking about a global issue here, and not a good time. Not a good time to be at war with the Middle East, because that's what Trump was working towards: peace in the Middle East, right? The Abraham Accords. Things were going so great. Things were going fantastic. Then COVID hit, and it threw everything in disarray. We couldn't really meet. We couldn't continue this. And even though we had COVID, we still had the Abraham Accords, which aligned a lot of peace deals with Israel. That was great. This is something that was unheard of. And Trump should have gotten the Nobel Peace Prize. He should have, but the hatred for him is just unbelievable. So he's not good. If Obama did half of that, he would have 30 of them by now. But people hate Trump, orange man bad, not give him anything, So he negotiated these peace deals. But it's kind of hard when you have somebody like Iran, which Obama, like I said, Obama relinquished billions of dollars, sent billions of dollars to them in pallets in response to releasing some hostages. Come on. Okay, they got billions of dollars. What did they do with that billions of dollars? They funded their proxies like Hezbollah and others, Hamas and the Houthis. They funded these and they got them up to speed, and they had money to go and orchestrate attacks against the United States and their interests. So, Iran just needs to be taken out, but they just need to figure out a way to just assassinate all their leaders basically and start over. But that would prompt probably a war again. So I'm gonna tune out. I'm gonna start watching the news a little bit more and brace yourselves. Brace yourselves, because things could get very bad. Things could get very bad. So pray for Israel, pray for Iran, pray for everybody, because this needs to stop. We need to come together and take care of each other. No more wars. We don't need these wars. They're not going to help anybody. A bunch of people that don't know each other are dying and fighting for people that know each other that don't like each other, right? These people that don't like each other, that know each other, are sending people that don't know each other to go kill each other for people that hate each other, right? So it's a disaster. So God bless the United States. God bless Israel, and hopefully God will soften the hearts of people in Iran to overthrow their regime. Take care until next time.